Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the show. This is another episode of the All Around Growth Podcast. And I've got a question for you. Do you ever feel crabby? Well, before we get into that, remember that we have the ability to choose our attitudes and our happiness for today. Like I said, this is an episode of the All Around Growth Podcast, episode number 215 to be specific. For those who are new to the show, this show provides insight and tools to build the life and homestead of your dreams. My name is Rob Kaiser and I am your host. Today's fodder for discussion comes from The Rudder of the Day, written by Dan Miller, author of 48 Days to the Work You Love. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. I frequently draw from the wisdom of the Peanuts comic strip. In one episode, Lucy announces, "Boy, do I feel crabby." Her little brother Linus is quick to rescue his sister. "Maybe I can be of help. Why don't you just take my place here in front of the TV while I go fix you a nice snack?" Sometimes we all need a little pampering to help us feel better. Then Linus brings her a sandwich, a few chocolate chip cookies, and some milk. "Now, is there anything else I can get you?" he asks. "Is there anything I haven't thought of?" "Yes, there's one thing you haven't thought of," Lucy responds, and she screams in his direction, "I don't want to feel better!" Quote, "The greater part of our happiness or misery depends on our dispositions and not on our circumstances." Close quote. Martha Washington. Lucy exemplifies a characteristic I see in a lot of people. They don't really want to change. Bad attitudes, bad decisions, bad habits, and bad results just seem to be too comfortable to risk any substantial change. We all have things in our histories that cannot change. We can't change our nationality, our parents, or the health we had yesterday. But we all have the ability to change our thinking and our attitudes today, and those will impact our results tomorrow. Quote, "I don't sing because I'm happy." Close. Whoops. Let's try that again. "I don't sing because I'm happy. I'm happy because I sing." William James. In his book, Today Matters, John Maxwell tells the story of a 92-year-old lady who was moving into a nursing home. As she was being wheeled down the corridor to her new room, the attendant began to describe the room. "I love it," the woman enthused. "But you haven't even seen the room yet," the attendant reminded her. "That doesn't have anything to do with it," she replied. "Happiness is something you decide on ahead of time. Whether I like my room or not doesn't depend on how the furniture is arranged. It's how I arrange my mind." What an incredible opportunity to arrange our mind in advance, to decide whether we are going to be happy or crabby. Now, before we ask ourselves a couple questions for today to provide some direction for today, let's take something from the Bible, from Proverbs, chapter 15, verses 1 through 4. "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise commends knowledge, but the mouth of the fool gushes folly. The eyes of the Lord are everywhere, keeping watch on the wicked and the good. The tongue that brings healing is a tree of life, but a deceitful tongue crushes the spirit." And finally, the questions for direction for today is, what attitude have you chosen for today? Have you decided to be happy or crabby? And I think that's a great question. I think those are great questions. And I know that for a while I was making some decisions. Well, it's not so much that I was making decisions to be crabby, but I think what happens when we don't go out of our way to actively decide to be happy is that we can simply become accustomed to being crabby. And it's easy. It's easy to get in that rut, and it's easy to stay in that rut, because sometimes this talk of positivity and reading things like we just read this morning from Dan Miller or John Maxwell or Simon Sinek or Michael Hyatt or anybody really for that matter who talks positivity, sometimes reading that stuff when we're in a funk can be well, it's just not what we want to hear. You know what I mean? It's easy to just fall into that rut and sort of create our own echo chambers of negativity. And with the way things are structured online, with social media and the way algorithms work, along with the groups that we can selectively involve ourselves with, it's easy to find these echo chambers of negativity as well and stay there. And perhaps it's not necessarily inherently negative, but a lot of the people in some of these groups and a lot of the content that is generated from the algorithm, when we utilize these platforms during these times of our life where we are in this funk, right? It becomes a loop that gets hard. It becomes harder and harder to get out of, and I think it's much more difficult now than it was in the past due to those things. You know, like I said, the algorithms, the groups, and those things aren't inherently negative themselves. A lot of people think they're evil, but I think that thought process occurs because they don't fully understand it, nor do they wish to engage in behaviors that mitigates their exposure to it. What I mean by that is implementing, browser extensions like Newsfeed Eradicator that give you the ability to post and share content on social media without getting involved in the news feed. Also giving you the ability to look at certain groups specifically without getting hung up in the news feed. And I think social media is best for simply having a platform to share your content, whatever it is that you're creating, and to engage people in order to grow whatever it is that you're doing. If it's just a thing that you do to spend time, guys, we've got more productive ways to spend time. We've got time that can be spent interacting with our own communities. Anyways, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the attitudes that we've chosen for today. And I can say today proudly that the attitude that I've chosen is to have a 110% attitude, because I made that decision last night. And I realized that after mixing up my journaling habits and my journaling routines, that if I looked at the next day and planned my day ahead of time in the evening by looking at the schedule, I could get up and journal some quick thoughts, what I was grateful for the day, or some initial first thoughts that came to mind while listening to some Epictetus quotes in the background. But I don't really need to put a whole lot of thought and effort into the planning for the day. I can simply review the plan for the day that I did the evening prior, and that's really helpful, and it seems to allow me to collect my thoughts and start off the day in a good way. And over the past few weeks, it's coming up on a month now, I'm pleased to report that my health is better. I did not intend to lose weight, but I've dropped a few pounds. I believe I'm sleeping better. And this is all worth it. I've put a lot of things on the back burner, and I'm doing my best to keep up with the things that I've taken on, like like a dummy. I'm not going to engage in this kind of self-deprecating like a dummy talk that doesn't serve us well. But the guy, and I've spoken about this before, but the guy that cuts our grass, I have a lot of respect for him, because he's always hustling, working on something. So he asked me for help building a website, and I said yes. So, because he helps us with the grass, and I want to help him, and I want to continue this. It's a good opportunity for both of us. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. So I agreed to do it. But beyond that, I'm not getting involved in a lot more than I was already involved with, and some of the things that I was involved with, like I said, have simply been tabled or put on the back burner so I can focus on my health. Cooking has become something enjoyable now. It's become the way in which I'm interacting with Cody and the produce and local farmers with the meat is wonderful. And not to mention the just feeling better from not drinking. That's been part of this elimination diet as well. And I think it's safe to say that I was maybe drinking a little bit too much at times. Anyways, what attitude have you chosen for today? And have you decided to be happy or crabby? Well, like I said, I've chosen to be happy. And sometimes it's difficult to maintain this attitude of happiness because, we don't want to seem as fake. And oftentimes we're surrounded by people who are not happy. But we have to interact with them and we have to engage with them. And they can be like energy vampires. If we allow them to get to us, they can suck that happiness right out of us. It's like they feed on it. Like some kind of weird... I was going to take that in a really strange direction, but I'll spare you for now because we are on the last leg of the morning commute and I don't want to take you down any weird wormholes as we are discussing how we choose our attitudes for the day. So as you think about this, as you think about these questions for the day, I would like to also encourage you to check out the show notes where I will have a link to the book, The Rudder of the Day, which is a great little book by Dan Miller. That'll take you to where you can see some information on the book, and you can also click around within there and learn more about Dan Miller, learn more about the 48 Days community that I am a member of and speak so highly of and speak so frequently about. I think it's a big part of what's provided me with some tools and insight, that I share with you here, and at least in the form of the thoughts that come out. That's one area that I'm using to gain tools and resources to improve my own life. Not so much my own homestead, but like I've said before, life first, homestead second. And there are so many ways that we can think about and work on and improve our life, health being one of them. And books like this, The Rudder of the Day, are a great way to take advantage of that time, the golden hour, that is the most important time of the day. The first hour upon waking up sets the stage for how we begin the day, sets the tone for how we're going to approach the day, how we're going to respond to all the challenges that we're presented with, and how we're going to work towards solutions to the problems that we face. And ultimately, give us some time to reflect on how we will choose our attitude for the day. So, that's it for today's show, guys. We are wrapping up another episode of the All Around Growth Podcast. Like I said, check out the show notes. If you like what you hear, share it with a friend, share it with some of the groups that you're in on social media, or just blast it to your own accounts, your own home pages, and feel free to tag the All Around Growth Podcast on whatever platforms you're using. I like to think that I'm on most, but I don't use the legacy platforms quite as much as some of the newer ones, which I would encourage you to check out. Maybe I'll do an episode on the newer social medias that I'm using. I've done this before in the past a couple of times, but things are changing. Things are always evolving, and it's kind of fun to share that with you and get some dialogue going about that as well. So guys, I hope you have a great day. I hope that when you make the decision for today on how to, what attitude that you choose. I hope that you decide to be happy instead of crabby. This is Rob Kaiser, and thank you.